Nervous system is basically the control center of the body. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this and we're gonna look at the different divisions within the nervous system. First, we have the central nervous system, and second, we have the peripheral nervous system. So these two are the two systems that we can divide the nervous system into. Central nervous system is the processing center of the nervous system. A lot of processing happens here, and peripheral nervous system is what connects the central nervous system to the limbs and the organs. So we have the processing in the central, and then we have the peripheral nervous system, and these two work very well. Now, let's take this central nervous system and divide that. Central nervous system can be divided into the brain and the spinal cord. Now, the brain is the center of the nervous system. This is where most of the processing is happening. This is the part that's found within the skull. And this is where things like thoughts and emotions, coordinating bodies, and activities and all of that stuff happen in the brain. Then we have, of course, the spinal cord. The spinal cord sends signals to and from the rest of the body. So it's connecting the brain to the rest of the body. Basically, sensory signals come into spinal cords and motor signals go out from the spinal cord. And we're gonna talk about this as we deal with peripheral nervous system. And the peripheral nervous system consists of, once again, two parts. That's the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. Let's talk about somatic nervous system first. The somatic nervous system is where we get control of the voluntary activities. This is where skeletal systems are involved. For if example I want to walk, I need to contract the muscle in my legs, and that is a voluntary activity that is controlled by the somatic nervous system. If I want to smile, I need to control the muscle on my face. By the way, it takes less muscle to smile than to frown, but I'm sure you know that. This is all the somatic nervous system, and then of course, we have the autonomic nervous system, which is not voluntary. This is where involuntary things that happen in the body. It controls visceral functions like heart rate, respiration rate, digestions, and all of those things you don't need to think about. They just happen. They are involuntary. And that is under the control of the autonomic nervous system. Now, we can take the autonomic nervous system and divide it into two parts. We have the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. On the sympathetic nervous system, it is involved in the fight or flight response of the body. So it is what happens to your body when you are under stress. Things like increasing your heart rate, respiration, and anything that you are increasing when you are under stress. So if you go for a nice long jog and your heart rate starts increasing and your respiration rate increases, that is under the control of the sympathetic nervous system. And then we have the parasympathetic nervous system. It is the opposite of the sympathetic nervous system. This is involved during rest and digest activities. So it is the complete opposite of under stress. It is when there is a rest. You are slowing things down. You are relaxing. That is your parasympathetic. And these are both under the autonomic nervous system. So that is a division of the nervous system. I hope that was clear to you. Thank you.
Your brain, the most complex organ in your body. The seed of who we are or what we are. It contains all our thoughts and our memories. In short, we are our brains. Our brains contain many parts that perform different functions. Deep in the center of the brain is the brainstem. This is the oldest part of the brain. It controls many essential functions such as breathing and heart rate or blood pressure, as well as feeling hungry or thirsty. It is also the seed of our most fundamental emotions, happiness and sadness, fear and love or hate. They all seem to reside in the brainstem. Sitting at the top of the brainstem is the thalamus. This is like an older version of our brain, which directs the gateway to the higher brain regions. All sensory information from our bodies, whether it's sensations in the skin or sense of touch, processed through the thalamus and is directed to the correct regions of the cortex for further processing. Surrounding the thalamus is a structure called the hippocampus. This is a crucial part of the brain. It's where our spatial working memories are. That lets us remember where we put those keys or how to get back home from work or school. The folded outer surface of the brain is called the cerebral cortex. Although it all looks the same, it's actually divided into different lobes that perform very different roles. The occipital lobe contains the visual cortex, and so it's concerned mainly with vision. The parietal lobe is concerned with processing sensory information and integrating it with the visual information from the occipital lobe. The temporal lobe is the center for memory and learning. It contains the hippocampus and a number of other regions that are required for us to recognize different objects and faces, signs, and environments. The frontal lobe is probably the most important part of the brain for defining us as who we are. It's where our higher emotions and personality reside, as well as language and social behavior. Lots of the things that we think of as being human. It's our decision-making center. It contains the motor cortex, which control the voluntary movements. At the back of the brain are the two lobes of the cerebellum. This region of the brain is the coordinating center for movement, allowing us to move multiple sets of muscles in a coordinated fashion so that we could walk and talk, put things up and put things down. So what are our brains made of? Muscle or bone? No, there's none of those in the brain, even though it takes over a lot of calories you eat just to keep it running. Instead, your brain is made up of billions upon billions of cells called neurons. These cells are very specialized with long extensions through which they talk with each other and form large and complex networks. These networks are the basis of how the brain does what it does. The processes have two basic types: dendrites receiving incoming information from other neurons. Signals pass through the cell body or soma, where if sufficient information is received, a signal is passed to the other neurons by the axon. This is happening in billions of neurons across the brain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's happening right now while you are watching this. So how do neurons talk to each other? Neurons are usually seen to use electrical signals to communicate. However, the act of passing signal from one neuron to another is actually a chemical process. This happens to structures called synapses. These are formed from the terminal of an axon and a swimming on the dendrite called the spine. Electrical signals from the axon pass to the dendrite via a chemical messenger called a neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitters are stored in small vesicles inside the axon terminal or the presynaptic button. When a signal arrives down the axon, one or more of these vesicles join with the outer membrane of the button and releases its contents into a small deck between the axon and dendrite. This is the synaptic cleft. On the other side of the synaptic cleft are receptor molecules to which the transmitter binds in much the same way as a key fits into the lock. The receptor molecules act as poles to the outer membrane of the dendritic spine, allowing charged atoms or ions to cross. This entry of charged ions into the spine recreates the signal that was sent from the previous neuron, and in this way, information can be passed from one neuron to the next and around the neuronal network. Although we see only one neuron here talking to one other neuron, in reality, each neuron talks to many others, linking thousands upon thousands of spines. In this way, an extraordinary complex system can be built that allows us to see, hear, and experience the world around us. It allows us to walk and talk and to laugh and cry and to be who we are. So we really are our brain.